Today, I want to talk about one of the biggest decisions you need to make if you're playing Fantasy Super Rugby, and that is when to use your precious triple captain booster. Can only be used once during the season. We're 4 rounds in now. We got a bit of the lay of the land a bit. We know who's hot and who's not, both in terms of individuals and in terms of teams. There's still quite a bit more to unfold, but it's definitely time to start thinking about this. And if you're not one of those absolute giga chads who triple captain D-Mac round 1 against the Blues at Eden Park, before we knew the Blues was shit, D-Mac, he went on to get 300 points that game if you triple captain him. If you're just one of the mere mortal simpletons like me who thought it would be a good idea to just wait a little bit, just try and get a little bit of information, make an informed decision based on that, based on thinking about it. If you're one of those fools like me, this video is for you, because I've been thinking about it. I've been looking at what the options are, and I'm going to share with you today my thinking about when you should use your triple captain. Now, the basic strategy is this. It's pretty intuitive. 1, we just want to identify what are going to be the highest scoring fixtures this season. What are the games where one team is just going to put up a cricket score and the most tries are going to be scored? And then 2, once we identify those games, we want to look at those teams and see who is the player or players who are going to benefit the most from that. Who is going to run in those 3 tries? That's the guy we want to triple captain. Now, if we come over here to the current standings, I like this super.rugby table because it shows you a lot of different columns here, and I want you to pay attention to these tries for and tries against columns here. This is what we want to pay attention to, because a lot of the scoring in fantasy, it all revolves around try scoring plays, because it's not just the 15 points a player gets for the tries. Is usually associated try assists, line break assists, offloads, tackle bust, all that sort of thing. And we can see here, if you look down the tries against column, the 2 leakiest teams are the Western Force and Moana Pacifica on 22 and 23 respectively. And you can disagree with this, but in my opinion, these 2 teams, they probably are going to be the 2 weakest teams this year, or at least they probably are going to be the teams that concede the most points and are likely to have those cricket scores point against them. I know the Moana, they're looking better this year. They did get that big upset against the Hurricanes last week, and you know, a little bit of a caveat there, the Hurricanes, they were starting to carve them up in the back end of that game. They were threatening the comeback, even though it did turn out to be a bridge too far. And the Western Force, they're kind of a nuggety team, but again, in this last round, we saw them crack a bit against the Waratahs. The Tars did end up putting quite a few points against them. And look, you can disagree with this. The logic still holds. You can identify your own teams as you think are the ones who will concede the most points. But for this example, we will continue with Pacifica and Force being the teams I'm talking about. And of course, things can change as the season goes on as well. If you keep holding on to your triple captain, which is fine, by the way, there is 15 or 16 rounds in this competition. You can wait and see and get a better idea, because things, they definitely aren't perfectly clear at the moment, but this is the approach I'm taking. The other thing we want to identify is who are the teams who are scoring the most points, and this is less clear right now. I mean, the Chiefs, they were looking like the strongest team until they stumbled a bit against the Drua last week in Lautoka. No shame in that. They've scored 20 tries in 4 games. That's an average of about 5 tries a game. And you can see a lot of teams are sort of tied on that average at the moment. Waratahs, 15 tries in 3 games. That's 5 tries a game as well. Same with the Crusaders. So there is a bit of a logjam there. It's the Moana Pacifica, funnily enough, who have the highest try scoring average, 22 tries in 4 games, mostly coming from that big win against the Canes last week. But we can't just look at the stats, we do have to be a bit smarter. Obviously, not all of the teams have had the same sort of start to the season in terms of their fixtures. Like if we look at the Reds, for example, they've already played both Moana and the Western Force, 2 kind of easier matchups, and as soon as they've come over to New Zealand, they've been crushed by the Crusaders. So, you know, we can't get too carried away with the Reds. Conversely, other teams have had tougher starts to the season. But anyway, I don't think it'll be too much of a stretch to say that the teams that are most likely to put up the most points to put up a cricket score, it's going to be teams like the Chiefs. They're dangerous. Could be the Crusaders as well. If the Hurricanes turn themselves around, maybe they will, maybe they won't. They could be a threat as well. Next, we want to come over here and take a look at the fixtures for those weaker teams. Here we have the Force. We can see this weekend they're coming up against the Crusaders. In a few more weeks later in the season, they'll be coming up against the Chiefs. These are 2 fixtures where we might want to be looking at players from the Chiefs and the Crusaders to see as triple captain candidates. Same thing here, looking at Pacifica. This isn't this week, the Pacifica, they do have a bye, but they will be playing the Chiefs in the round after that. That is another candidate you want to look at for a triple captain later on in the season. After that, straight after that, in fact, they play the Crusaders. The other thing you want to check with these fixtures as well is that ideally you do want the stronger team to be playing at home. That does tend to be where the big cricket scores get put on. In this case here, Moana Pacifica and the Chiefs, I think that's happening in Pukekohe, and Crusaders Moana, that is happening in Christchurch. For these Force matchups, Crusaders Force this weekend, it is in Christchurch, whereas the Chiefs matchup, it's at the Mount, I think, so it is a home game for the Chiefs, but it will not be at FMG. Now the next thing to do, once you've identified a fixture that you want to target, you have to decide which player you're actually going to choose for the triple captain boost. Now if we come over here, look at the Chiefs for example, there's a really obvious candidate in Damian McKenzie. He is injured at the moment, not sure when he's going to be back. Sometimes as well, for these matchups against weaker teams, strong players do get rested, they might get subbed early. That's something to think about as well. So you do have to consider your other options. Midfield at the Chiefs is very strong this year. If we have a look at the Crusaders as the other example, you've got 2 very strong, very obvious candidates in the form of Sevu Reece and Will Jordan. I think between these 2 guys, you've got Sevu Reece, who's sort of got the higher ceiling, and then you've got Will Jordan, who's he's got a pretty high ceiling, but he's got a higher floor as well, just because being at fullback, he's a bit more involved, but he's also the guy who's more likely to be doing a last pass to one of the wings who's actually going to cash in, like Sevu Reece, and they're going to be the ones who get those actual plus 15s for the tries, and that's what gives them that high ceiling. But you can make a choice there on if you prefer to be a little bit safer or go for the big bucks. There is another thing you can do as well to help your decision making, and that's to have a look at last year's matchup between these teams. Here we've got Chiefs versus Moana 2024. Chiefs put 68 points on them. I think that was the most points anybody put on a team last year. And we can see, like, looking at the stats here, tries, Amoni Narawa, he got 3 tries. He would have been going gangbusters in fantasy for this game. Scroll down a bit more, he's topping out in line breaks as well. And if we come over here and look at the actual lineup for that game, we can see Narawa, he was at 14 and DMAC was at 10. And Narawa, he would have been the better option this game for whatever reason. And look, last year, it's not this year. It's another thing to throw into your decision-making process. Narawa, he's probably not going to be a bad option. But to be honest, I probably would still pick McKenzie if he was playing that game, but it's up to you to make the decision. We come over and look at last year's Crusaders versus Moana example. This is a good example of how this this process doesn't actually help that much. We can see Cody Taylor, he got 2 tries, probably more tries. Will Jordan and Sevu Reece didn't even play in this game. And obviously the Crusaders, they were terrible last year. And, you know, they still might not be that good this year either. So, yeah, this approach can only get you so far looking at last year's fixtures. But definitely something you can do if you're struggling to make your choice. Anyway, guys, I think that'll mostly do it from me. To sum it up, I think this weekend, Will Jordan or Sevu Reece versus the Force in Christchurch, they're good triple captain options. The week after that, D-Mac against Pacifica, that's a good option. Also, the Chiefs do play Moana a second time, I think in the second to last round of the season, and that will be at FMG. So if you don't want to spend your triple captain boost now, don't panic about it. There will still be opportunities to come. I think these games at the end of the season, the weaker teams, if they're out of playoff contention, they can put their heads down a bit. They can also get blown off the park in those stages of the season as well. So yeah, just don't panic. Hopefully this has been helpful to you guys. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel because the lineups for the next round will be out soon, and I will be doing another best picks video, and I'll see you then.